Hello there, Commonwealth from here. Pokémon Legends Arceus is the greatest leap in the history of the Pokémon franchise, all taking place in the new Hisui region, which will become Sinnoh later, a massive explorable land where you're not bound to specific corridor routes but can explore according to your preferences. At the same time, something is off with this game and province, as though the world is very varied and filled with expressive Pokémon, the detail and textures of the landscape surrounding them seem, for the lack of a better word, outdated. But why is this? And why does the most important game so far from the world's most valuable entertainment franchise look so primitive compared to pretty much every similar Nintendo Switch title? Throughout this video, after you've liked this video and subscribed to be among the under 9,000 left to 300,000 subscribers, which unlocks our big Switch OLED Plus game giveaway, we will talk about Pokémon Legends Arceus graphics and why they are the game's biggest immediate drawback. So to get things out of the way, let's just acknowledge that the released version of Pokémon Legends Arceus looks far better than the February 2021 reveal trailer, with better texture work, color correction, vibrancy, contrasting, and so on. And compared to Pokémon Sword and Shield, this isn't bad at all. Yes, it is still primitive, but compared to what? Other Nintendo Switch games, obviously, that have a tradition or at least multiple console titles in 3D before their big Switch game. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 had 2 prior games which made it possible for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to look like this. Monster Hunter, or more specifically Capcom, left Nintendo to deliver World before returning back with that experience in order to make Rise. And Zelda had 5 prior 3D console titles before jumping into HD and the open world with Breath of the Wild. In other words, the franchises we're comparing Pokémon Legends Arceus graphics to had the necessary experience before delivering the highly rated Nintendo Switch releases. Pokémon, and with that Game Freak on the other hand, had been stuck to handhelds until late 2016 and some of the team until 2017 with Ultra Sun and Moon. And this is the thing, many tend to forget, but Game Freak first released a 3D title back in 2013 with Generation 6 and Pokémon X and Y, then went on immediately to work on Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon before moving on to creating HD titles. Transitioning from 240p to 1080p with Sword and Shield in 2 years with Little Town Hero as the test bunny right before was a drastic change to make, especially when you have no experience with modern HD titles. Thus we should commend Game Freak after the Pokémon Sword and Shield experiment of developing and launching a title of the ambition and scale as Pokémon Legends Arceus is, only a little over 2 years after launching the Gen 8 title. The output of games from Game Freak has been insane, but it has also come at a cost, as beginning with Generation 6, we have seen that the mainline Pokémon franchise has lost much of its magic. The reason behind this decline in quality is simple. Game Freak has had to leap generations in graphics in just a few years, while still delivering a brand new Pokémon generation every 3 years. 3 years, as we have seen in the case of Zelda, is not enough to deliver a new graphical revolution. 5 years is required. With Pokémon Legends Arceus coming out a little over 2 years after Sword and Shield, and as the big conclusion release of Pokémon's 25th anniversary, it is clear that Game Freak had to make graphical sacrifices to turn Legends Arceus into reality, and for a January 28 release on top of that. And this is the thing that is always overlooked when calling out Game Freak for their lazy animations and visuals, or if you prefer graphics. The fact that they are developing and releasing games more often than any other studio publishing exclusively for Nintendo. Combine this with the need to push for more impressive visuals in every new release, and you have the recipe for disaster. Visual, technical, but most of all in content and story, as Pokémon has after Generation 5 turned in my eyes into a below 80 to low 80 franchise, which says money before quality in graphics, gameplay and story, where gimmicks have replaced the continuous improvement in all of the 3 fields from Gen 1 to Gen 5. The truth is very sad, but Pokémon peaked on the DS, and since then impressed less and less until the graphical embarrassments that are Sword and Shield and presumably Legends Arceus. The texture work and lack of detail is clearly an issue, and probably an issue that Game Freak has been aware of long before the tree controversy in the wild area of Sword and Shield. But due to lack of development time, you got a sloppy result like this from a team that not only is pressured to deliver new games faster than ever before, but also expand the world with every installment, resulting in the graphical mess that feels off-putting to so many, especially in Western markets where games are often measured by the graphical benchmark, something that is less important in Japan, where handheld experiences have been king the last decade. Thus Pokémon, despite its primitive graphics, do not meet the same backlash in Japan as in say US, Europe or Australia. As in Japan, the games sell like no other region when we compare the number of copies sold per 100,000 people. But as long as the Japanese market continues to buy these games for the gameplay without bothering too much about the crude graphics compared to other Nintendo franchises, the less likely it is that it will change beyond a comparison to other Switch titles outside of a slight upgrade in visuals. Since what matters to the Pokémon company are profits, and no individual market is more important than the Japanese one for them. And as long as their countrymen, women and children are happy and new Pokémon titles continue to sell over 15 million copies, it is unlikely that we'll see a drastic change. Pokémon games don't look great, but there is a reason for it. It isn't a priority. If it was, then Game Freak and the Pokémon company would have created bigger gaps than 3 years between each new Pokémon generation and mainline title. Such primitive graphics and rehashing animations over and over is not a sign of laziness but greed of the parent Pokémon company, which needs a new generation every 3 years in order to sell all new kinds of merchandise. That is the brutally honest truth as to why these graphics look like this, as the games that created the franchise are only used today as a tool to bring new Pokémon to the table, and with it new plushies, figurines and so on merch. The truth is, and especially if you go to Japan, is that Pokémon is an empire. But an empire that is clearly overstretching when it comes to how often they want to release new generations and titles. And the weakness of this cycle is a development team that has less time to develop engines and simply catch up to the franchises we like to compare Pokémon Legends Arceus to, namely the latest Zelda and Monster Hunter. It is just that Zelda's leap in graphics and gameplay usually takes 5 to 6 years to deliver, and while Monster Hunter usually doesn't take much more than 3 years, which we saw in the case between Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise, the inexperience found within Game Freak doesn't help when you want to develop new games every 3 years, since well they are simply inexperienced, and that results in poor looking Pokémon games. In Legends Arceus' case, the art style helps in blending the character design with the world design, making it not a massive crisis from at least a visual standpoint. With that being said, it is clear that the primitiveness of the handheld past is still visible in Game Freak's new HD projects. Legends Arceus is just the most visible example due to its open nature and grand landscapes which make the graphical shortcomings more visible. But here's the twist: more visible for teenagers and young adults, but not for children, which is usually the main target group for the Pokémon company. Just look at the marketing, as you will rarely see an adult in them unless he or she is playing with his or her child. In other words, the graphical situation surrounding Pokémon Legends Arceus is complicated, as it is a typical example of greed and deliberate business decisions and models that clearly point to that these games just need to look and play good enough, so that they can get a positive rating, sell, become popular and with it push more merch. Rinse repeat every 3 years. Nevertheless, with Pokémon Legends Arceus still being part of Generation 8 of Pokémon, it is clear that for the first time in a decade we could see a Pokémon generation last 4 years. Which is positive, as we don't need new Pokémon games every 3 years, and especially after Legends Arceus, I don't want to see another generation starting in 2022. 2023 would be perfect. And personally, I would have even nothing against Game Freak being allowed to take their time to say late 2024 for Gen 9, all in the name of elevating and improving the graphic visuals, while also bringing the main quest and post games back to the standard and ambition that we were used to until the end of Gen 5. That is a healthy future for the Pokémon franchise when it comes to their games. Then we'll see if quality in both graphics and gameplay will triumph over quantity and greed in the future. Pokémon Legends Arceus only being one title and not two is a step in a healthy direction. But only Gen 9 and 10 can tell us whether Pokémon will remain as the super popular but also under-delivering franchise compared to any other Nintendo franchises with new games when it comes to graphics and quality on the Nintendo Switch, or finally reach up to them. If that is to happen, then we cannot see more lazy new game and remake efforts, as especially seen in Pokémon Sword and Shield and Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl at the end of 2021. As at the end of the day, the ambition of Arceus is a breath of fresh air in a predictable franchise. But what keeps our excitement from reaching up to the roof are sadly the graphics. They're not appealing, and that is sad, as this game could have been so much more hype than what it is if it simply looked a little better. And sadly for Game Freak, as of 2022, gaming graphics constantly evolve. It is just that Game Freak seems to still be lagging behind even for Nintendo standards, which says more than enough when Nintendo's games are dependent on great art styles to mask the bigger and bigger visual gap and shortcomings to the current generation of consoles. And that is my rather in-depth take about Pokémon Legends Arceus graphics. Do you agree with my observations, or do you think I have overlooked something? If so, then write it down in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like it, as the more likes and views, the more Pokémon Legends Arceus videos we'll make forward. And to not miss any of these, be sure to press that subscribe button and notification bell. Something you will want to do since we have another topical Legends Arceus video in production. Last but definitely not least, a big shout out goes to all our patreon.com/CommonRealm patrons, and in particular our role producer Charles. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.